Our board president and founder, Jeff Morrell, the Albany Underground artists, a gentleman by the name of George Kansas, and a few other folks got together in response to the 2004 Southeast Asian tsunami, and really felt like they wanted to do something to support relief efforts. So what they did, Jeff having a background in the music industry, was they got all local talent, got the Palace Theater to donate their space, got people to donate artwork for sale, all volunteer driven, put together in, I think, 5 or 6 weeks on less than $1,000 in cash sponsorship, and raised almost $25,000 for disaster relief efforts. Out of that, a lot of connections were made with local artists, and a couple realizations happened. One, there's this great sort of booming art scene in Albany, but there's no real hub for it, so it's kind of dispersed throughout the city. There's no real central place to promote it, market it, to see it. And the other is that at a moment's notice, artists were seemingly willing to mobilize and utilize their creative talents to benefit others. And it was, like I said, all local talent. There was no time to pull in a national act or do any of that. So this idea started forming to put a roof over the Rock to Rebuild concept. And that's where we come to the barn. People ask all the time, okay, you're in an old school, we don't understand why you're called the barn. So it's this idea of a barn raising, a community coming together to raise a structure that ultimately benefits everyone. And that's kind of the point behind this. When we first started talking about this, there wasn't necessarily a location in mind. It was very conceptual, just we were going to find a space, provide housing, quality, affordable housing and workspace to artists, which they were all clamoring, saying they needed, and that would have this sort of revitalizing effect because we'd be able to free up the artists to do community engagement, to pursue their craft rather than doing all of those stereotypical starving artist jobs, and that it would have a sort of, like I said, radiating impact on whatever community. Fast forward to 2007, and we're working with the Albany Housing Authority, and they're looking at a very specific site, the place that you're standing in right now, for a revitalization project. So in 2003, the Arbor Hill Neighborhood Association, the Albany Housing Authority, the city, a number of community stakeholders kind of got together and wrote a 10-year strategic plan for the Arbor Hill neighborhood. For any of you who don't know much about Arbor Hill was, in its heyday, a great mixed-use, busy, commercial district with a lot of minority-owned businesses, particularly on North Swan Street. So that was a huge element. Lots of owner-occupied storefronts below, housing above. This was a place where you could come and get everything that you needed within walking distance of your home. Fast forward a little bit. Late 70s, particularly in the 80s, a lot of suburban flight, de-investment, crime, and you ended up with North Swan Street having a different kind of commerce, and a lot of those businesses closing down, vacancy, absentee landlordism, all the things that come with that. So in 2003, the Arbor Hill Neighborhood Association, community stakeholders, city basically said enough is enough, we've got to figure out what to do about this. So one of the sort of key places that were identified in the neighborhood plan was this particular building, which used to be St. Joseph's Academy. Opened in 1904, was a school until the mid-70s, closed down and became a rec center for a little bit, closed again in the early 90s. Sat vacant ever since. So beautiful historic building, lots of great connections to members of the community. They felt a relationship with this building, wanted to save it, but needed to figure out how to reuse this 42,000 square foot building in a way that really had, again, that radiating effect onto the community. So Albany Barn teamed up with the Albany Housing Authority, did a feasibility study on the space and discovered, hey, we can put artists in there. Project goals. So on an organizational level, we're really looking for sustainability. We don't want to be the nonprofit that is continually going out and fundraising to keep our lights on. So although we are a not-for-profit, we're chartered to remain affordable for our artist tenants and to provide services that support the artist community and the larger community. We are actively seeking revenue streams from the utilization of this space and from services that we can provide affordably to to support our bottom line. So that if we're fundraising 5 years from now, it's not for staffing or our light bill, it's for some great, awesome new program that anybody would jump at the chance to fund. Community engagement. So we're in the Arbor Hill community, predominantly low-income community. Like I said, I've sort of gone through the trials and tribulations on a very high level of the community through the past. So we're looking to engage these folks in the arts. Some people don't necessarily see that the arts have a place in their day-to-day lives. People are looking for, in some cases, some very basic needs that aren't being met. So engaging the community in the arts, can be a bit of a challenge when there are sort of other bigger fish to fry. So doing that community engagement and really challenging the artists who are living and working here to actively engage the community in whatever way is best for them, and whatever way is their art sort of lends itself to. And the other is obviously revitalization. We want this to have a radiating impact. If an artist comes and gets an apartment or a studio here, it's our hope that eventually they outgrow the space. Either their income gets too high, right? Great. We don't want that. We want them to all make it big, become the next sort of big thing. Or they grow. Some of our studio tenants, maybe they get an employee or two, and now they need a bigger space. But we want them to grow within the neighborhood. There are unoccupied storefronts on North Swan Street. There's all sorts of business opportunity up and down Clinton Ave. We want people taking advantage of that. We really want them to stay in the community, to put down roots here, and that's why it's all about the community engagement. Really making relationships, becoming part of the neighborhood, becoming neighbors. If this place is an island, it doesn't work. It basically means that revitalization in a community is sort of spearheaded or led by the creative sector, but keeping with the tradition of the place where the creatives are sort of working. So keeping in mind that this is a historic neighborhood, keeping in mind the history and tradition of small business ownership, and particularly minority-owned businesses. So sort of keeping all of that history very relevant as we are sort of bringing in a creative element. And an incubator for the arts. So what does that mean? Again, we love buzzwords around here. So an incubator for the arts, what we're really looking for in our residential tenants and in our studio tenants are people who, yes, you're an artist, but you're a career-driven artist. So somebody who paints as a hobby to relieve stress when they get home from their other job, their career job. It's not necessarily who we're looking for. We're really looking for somebody who, even if they're not making a dime from their artwork today, their end goal is to make a living from something related to their creative talents. And we're here to help them get there, to provide some services that maybe aren't otherwise accessible to these folks. And then Arbor Hill Center for Arts and Culture. This is a historically rich neighborhood. There are great other cultural institutions and obviously a lot of great arts activities happening. We really want this to be a hub. We want this to sort of be a revolving door where anybody can come in, experience a visual art exhibition, a fashion show, a play, a concert, whatever it is. That this really is the place where you come into town, and you're staying downtown and somebody says, oh, where can I see like a really great, interesting fill-in-the-blank arts activity? Somebody says, come on. Goals, right? So our current status, we have 22 artists in our live work apartment program. This is done in partnership with the Albany Housing Authority. So this is essentially, for lack of a better term, affordable housing. So everybody who comes into our apartment program has to meet an income threshold, meaning they can't make above a certain income, and they also have to pass a selection interview. They sit down with a group of more well-established artists, professionals in arts organizations, community members, and they're evaluated based on their sort of planned career around the arts, what they're doing to build their career, what they think this place will do to enhance their career. So again, very career focused. And then also the other half of the interview is about that community engagement portion, both within the building and outside. So what are they going to bring to the table? What skill set do they have that helps other artists? What can they do to bring their art, sort of to the streets or to, a place where it's accessible to others? Looks different for everybody. Some people jumped right in and said, I want to teach kids how to paint. Other people said, you will never catch me dead staff your gallery. But we're always looking for new ways to involve the artists who are living and working here in that community engagement piece in whatever way works for them, their medium, their particular, sort of personality and skill set. There are 24 artists currently in our work studio program. So all of these spaces that you see around you here are workspaces. They're utilized for all sorts of different types of art making, as well as business, sort of incubation. So we have a graphic design firm, we have a multimedia production lab, we have a full-service recording studio, we have a small theater collective, and then we have folks who come and use their space strictly as makerspace. And then they do their sort of retail stuff either online or out in the community at festivals or art sales, galleries, things like that. There are 2 music rehearsal suites. Those operate on an hourly basis, so a band, rather than renting a subpar space in a warehouse where they're not sure if they'll have heat or cooling, and they're not sure that their gear is secure, can come in here, rent for a nominal hourly rate, either use our gear or bring their own, pay less for a higher quality rehearsal experience, and be around this sort of artist community as well. And then we do also have a resident theater company creative license that has started and doing their productions out of this space. And that sort of came about, we didn't really envision this being a popular performance venue right off the bat. We weren't sure that people would, know what this place even was or what we did. We don't have a parking lot, we don't have a concessions space. There are all sorts of things that we didn't have. This was a unique, somewhat challenging space. We were fortunate to find a great partner that came in and said, we love it. We want to work with those challenges and present great live theater that's accessible here, doing shows that other theaters aren't doing. So that's great. We're able to bring that element in somewhat unexpectedly, pretty early on. So planned facilities. You're sitting in a theater space. Because we did not envision this being a performance space primarily, we really thought this would be more workshopping, set building, rehearsals before you got into your performance space. We don't have a permanent sound system or lighting, other than our utility lighting on the stage. That's a huge, a huge challenge for us in the coming year, is that we will need to fundraise to fully fit up this theater space. It's gotten tons of use. I moved my office over here May 1st of 2014. If you've learned something today that you didn't know about the barn, tell a friend, or 20 or 100. I've been talking about this for the better part of 10 years. I feel like I talk to everybody about it, but I always run into people who are like, I think I've heard of that, but I don't know what it is. So tell your friends. Participate. We have tons of programs, tons of events, from sewing and dance classes to like I said, concerts, theatrical performances. Our Fusion event is coming up October 16th. That's really the only major fundraiser that Albany Barn does for itself every year. And it's tons of fun, and it's a great opportunity to really experience what our artists are doing. There will be live art making, visual art displays from our resident artists, and it's just a really great time. And food by Chef Mark Graham, who's amazing. That's the end of my plug. And then volunteer. We have tons of events we need volunteers for. We have committees of our board that meet regularly and help with, setting policy or, making sort of those higher level decisions for the organization.